Good morning. I'm going to read our scripture from John 10, starting in verse 11. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. The reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life, only to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father. The Jews who heard these words were again divided. Many of them said, "He is demon-possessed and raving mad. Why listen to him?" But others said, "These are not the sayings of a man possessed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind?"
Yeah. Amen. Every person in this room has been led by someone else. Hopefully you've had some good experiences. Maybe you've been led by somebody who knows where they're going and why they're going there. Maybe you've been led by somebody who's trustworthy. Hopefully you've been led by somebody who cared about you and not just themselves. But it's very likely that we've all also experienced bad leadership, which is the opposite of all that. It's very likely that we've been led by somebody who didn't really know what they were doing or where they were going or why they were leading us. It's likely that we've been led by somebody who just was not trustworthy. And it's likely that we've been led by somebody who cared more about themselves and how they can serve themselves than they did about serving others. Unfortunately, many of us have experienced bad leadership, and what we all know from experience is that leadership makes a profound impact on our lives. It is so much easier to flourish under good leadership, and it is so difficult to grow and develop and have success under bad leadership. And I mention that because as we look at our passage today, we see Jesus addressing leaders who are getting it wrong, specifically the religious leaders. If you were here last week, it begins in verse 1 of chapter 10 and carries all the way through, which we read today, verse 21. And in the first few verses, Jesus is looking at these leaders and he's saying, "You are aimless. You claim to be leading people towards God, but when God shows up in the flesh, you reject him." And then here in these verses, he says, "And you're also not trustworthy. You also cannot be trusted. In fact, you are leading people astray, and you're only in this to serve yourselves." Jesus has a very critical rebuke of these religious leaders. And the reason why is because these people are not just in leadership, they are in religious leadership, which means people think that the way they lead shows them something about God. And for that reason, Jesus has to step in and say, "Okay, everybody, listen up. If you want to know what it's like to be led by God, you cannot look at these guys over here. Instead," Jesus says, "look at me. Look at the good shepherd. And that is how you will discover what it's like to be led and known by God." And there's three things that Jesus talks about in this passage that distinguish his leadership from everyone else's. Three things that I want us to consider when we ask the question, what would it be like for me to follow Jesus? The first thing you need to know is that God pursues those who are lost. There are so many leaders who say, either get on the bus or get run over by it. It's my way or the highway. So many leaders who say, get on the team or feel the wrath of the team. But Jesus is different. Jesus says God is one who, when somebody walks away, when somebody rejects him, instead of just saying good riddance, he pursues them. He pursues those who are lost. Now, let me pause for a second because the word lost can trip some people up. It's a designation that I think some people find patronizing. Like if you're here and you're not a follower of God and you're like, lost? Do you have to call people that? Maybe somebody's used it in a patronizing way towards you. Let me just say briefly that the word lost is chosen very strategically by Jesus. Because something that is lost maintains its value. Its value doesn't change at all when it's lost. In fact, you recognize the value of something more when it is lost. We don't use the word like infidel to describe unbelievers. Jesus uses the word lost because it dignifies those who have walked away or who are just not a part of the faith. Like, think about it this way. I was driving away from this building last week, and I drove, trying to get back on the highway. There's like a big median with lots of grass, and I saw two people in that grass. Cars are whizzing by. They're in business casual dress, and it's 90 degrees. And these two people are picking through every blade of grass on the side of the highway. It was a high-intensity, low-hope situation. You could tell by their body language. You could tell by their faces. They were desperately looking for something in the grass. Now, I don't know anything about these people, but I think we all know something about them. Whatever they lost was very valuable. That's the only reason they would be out there subjecting themselves to those conditions. They were determined. They needed whatever they had lost. And I want you to know that when Jesus describes God's relationship to us, this is how he describes him. As one who's searching for us like they've lost something they just can't live without. Jesus actually describes it this way in a parable in Luke 15. He says, suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep. When it comes to people, God doesn't cut his losses and move on. He pursues people wherever they go so that he can lead us back home. This is the nature of God. This is how our God works. And for this reason, so many people, their Christian journeys often start in surprising ways. I don't know the last time you heard somebody tell their story about coming to faith, but I can tell you, I've heard so many stories, not begin with a church or even a church person, but somebody say, I had gotten to the bottom of a bottle. I had just gone through a breakup or a divorce. I had just told somebody that I had zero doubts about my atheism, and suddenly I had a moment of awareness, and it was like God was there. That kind of experience only makes sense when you serve a God who pursues us to the places where we wander. This is not a God who stands from afar. Jesus didn't give the metaphor of saying, okay, God will stand on the bank across from a river and shout to you on the other bank and say, hey, you better get over here right now. You got yourself over there. You can figure it out. That water does not look very good, but good luck to you because you got yourself into this mess. So if you want me, get on back. That's not the metaphor he chooses. That's not the character of God. Instead, God is the shepherd looking for his sheep, coming to the places that we wander off to. I love this story from Bob Goff in his book, Love Does. And he talks about when he's in high school and he's first exploring faith, and he's got this leader who's like in his early 20s. He's part of a group called Young Life, and the leader's name is Randy. Randy's telling Bob about Jesus. Bob is interested, but Bob's also a squirrely teenager. And one day he wakes up, he's 17 years old, and he decides, you know what? I should drop out of school. It's not working for me. I don't like it. I'm going to drop out, and I'm going to move into the woods. Before he goes, he decides to tell Randy, hey, I won't be there this afternoon because I'm moving into the woods. Stops by Randy's apartment to tell him that. And now, I don't know what you would say if a 17-year-old said that to you. But Randy has a moment where he just pauses and he says, wait right there, I'm going to be right back. He disappears into his apartment, and when he comes back, Randy's got a bag on his shoulder, book bag on his shoulder, and a tent under his arm. And he says, all right, let's go, Bob. I'm with you. And Bob's like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, let's go. Where do you want to go? And Bob's like, actually, I don't have a car, so this is good news. Can we go to the national park instead of the park I was going to by my house? And he's like, sure. So they drive to the national park. And they get there, and then the first night is just magic. You know, it's electric. They're camping, and Bob had some food ready to go, and they eat it, and it's great. The next day they wake up, and Bob didn't have any other plans for food. So he goes to Randy like, hey, man, I'm sorry, but actually I don't really know I don't have any food, and this is a bummer. And Randy's like, I get it, man. It's all good. I'm with you. Let's figure it out. And so they try to figure out what they're going to do for food. By the second day, Bob wakes up that morning, and he's like, I don't want to be here anymore. And he tells Randy, listen, man, I'm really sorry. I don't actually think I should have dropped out of school. And I don't think that I can live in the woods for the rest of my life. And Randy's like, you know what? That makes sense. I just want you to know that I'm with you. Let's go back. Get you back home and get back on track. When Bob was an older man, he was reflecting on all that he had learned from Randy about Jesus, and he said this in his book. He said, God stays close to people who have forgotten who they are. So, if you have wandered from the faith, I just want you to know that God has not abandoned you, that you have not lost your shine, but rather that he is pursuing you, that he loves you, and that he wants to bring you back home. And if you are here and you love somebody who has wandered from the faith, can I offer you an encouragement? It is scary when people we love wander away from God. We have a sense of urgency, and we should. And I want you to know that we have our best guy on the job. The good shepherd is on the job. And here's what you should know about him. He's the best search and rescue team that's ever been assembled. He has found those who have covered their tracks and tried to disappear without a trace. He has found those who have wandered further than anyone's gone before. He has found those who have become unrecognizable to the people who knew them before. And so when you pray for the loved one you lost, pray with urgency, but also pray with hope. Because this God that you serve cares as much about the people that you love as you do. Even more, believe it or not, than you do. And let me just say this, for some people, kind of a phase or a stage of deconstruction can be necessary for reconstruction. They might have to pull some things down in order to actually build something up that can stand the test of time. Or to use the metaphor Jesus uses, sometimes people wander away and maybe their entire life they had a kind of relationship with God, but it wasn't really intimate or really vivid or really beautiful. I mean, they knew about him, but it was like God was at arm's length. Jesus says, when the prodigal's son returns, you don't get in arm's length like, hey, how you doing? I'm back. When you return, when the prodigal sons return, it's full embrace. And if you have to go through a season of wandering to get that embrace, to really know that he loves you, then maybe the journey was worth it. But we have a God who seeks those who wander away. The second thing we learn about God, and this is going to sound redundant, but actually it's not. We also serve a God who commits to those who waffle. He loves those who wander, he pursues those who wander, but he's also committed to those who waffle. Listen to verse 11 and 13. I'm the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand who cares nothing for the sheep. So here's what Jesus says. These leaders that are giving you your impression about who God is, they don't get it. Like, they're just using you. They need the followers in order to boost their profile, but they do not care about you. They are like the hired hand who will bail if you become inconvenient or troublesome. Jesus says, I am here with you no matter what. I'm fully committed to the sheep, even if it gets me in trouble, even if it means I step into danger. It doesn't matter. I'm fully committed to you. We don't have a lot of relationships like this in our lives, where someone just truly is like, I don't care what you do, I'm going to be for you no matter what. They're rare. And in fact, we live in a very consumer culture, and we're very accustomed to consumer relationships. And some of that's normal. Like, it's very normal. Like, if you love your hairstylist and you think they're great, but they give you a perm every time you come in and ask for I had to look up haircuts, and ask for a bob. They're giving you perms. Is that right, Jackie? Is that a thing? A bob? Okay. You're getting perms. It's been a minute since I've been to a hairstylist. Blunt bob. I looked it up. A blunt bob. There it is. That's what you're getting. That relationship will be over soon. You might like your coffee shop. Feel really good about them. But if they start doubling the prices, or the baristas totally change things and it stops tasting like it used to taste, you're out on that coffee shop. And that's completely legitimate because this is a consumer environment. The problem is that we bring consumerism into all of our other relationships. Like consumer romances, where we say, I'm with you so long as you meet my needs. Consumer friendships, where we say, I'm with you unless I find something better. And then this one is more and more common. Consumer families. I don't like you, so why should I have to keep caring about you? In our culture, there's really no relationship that's off limits to apply kind of that consumer mindset to. We fully embrace waffling. We fully embrace saying, I want to keep my options open. But in this passage, Jesus says, yeah, here's the thing. I'm not doing that. I'm not waffling. I'm not questioning. I am fully committed to the sheep no matter what it costs me. Jesus teaches us that unlike most of our relationships, God's love for us is not conditional. It is, in fact, you've probably heard this before, unconditional. He loves and pursues us even if we do not reciprocate. Now, here's what's amazing, though, about God's unconditional love. God is a relational God. He wants to have a real relationship with you. And all relationships have conditions. If you think about a relationship, be it spouse or a friend or anybody, there are certain things that you're like, if you want this relationship to work, I need you to do this or not do this. We have boundaries within relationships. There are rights and wrongs within relationships. That's the only way a relationship can grow and work. There are conditions to a flourishing, growing relationship. And God is no different. You read through the Bible, and He's going to give you plenty of conditions that you need to follow if you want life to go right and if you want a relationship with Him. The conditions are there. And yet, He loves us unconditionally. So how do we make sense of that? How can that possibly actually work? And the best way I can square that edge is to take you to Genesis chapter 15, where we have a rarity. Genesis chapter 15 is a story which is simultaneously essential and obscure. It's one that everybody needs to know if they're going to understand God, and it's one that very few people know. And for that reason, I try to tell it at least once a year. David and Goliath is great. Okay? This is really going to help you understand God, what we see in Genesis 15. So let me set it up. In Genesis 15, God has begun a relationship with a man named Abram, who will later be called Abraham. So he starts this relationship with Abram. Abram doesn't know God at all, but as they journey together, he's starting to understand God. And God tells Abram, I want to make you a promise, a covenant, the most powerful kind of promise. And I want you to know that I'm ready to bless you so that you can be a blessing to the whole world. I want to give you a family that blesses the whole world, that changes the world, that starts to set things right. He gives Abram a vision and a promise for the future. And then Abram knows what to do next. Okay, well, if you're going to do that for me, here's what I'm going to commit to you. And Abram starts to lay out how he and his descendants are going to be faithful to God. How they're going to love God and not get distracted by other gods and not forget about God. They're going to be true to God. They'll be a great partner in this relationship, Abram says. So that's the commitment he's making. In order to seal the promise, this is why the story is obscure. In order to seal this promise, they do something which is called in the ancient world a suzerain-vassal agreement. Here's how it worked. When a great power made a deal with a little power, they would do this kind of agreement where they would say, I'm going to make a promise to you and you're going to make a promise to me. And they would do it in a really particular way. And here's where we come to Genesis chapter 15, verse 9. Let me describe the process of this kind of agreement. The Lord said to Abram, bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a pigeon. Abram brought all these to him, cut them in two, and arranged the halves opposite each other. The birds were not cut in half. Then birds of prey came down on the carcasses, but Abram went out and drove them away. Some of you are thinking, I think this story should stay obscure. And I hear you. Or like, this is why I don't read my Bible. This freaks me out. But let me explain. This was totally normal in the ancient world. And the reason that they would split the animals in half is because they wanted to create a path for their agreement. And the way that it worked was you would walk through this path between the two carcasses, and as you made your promise to the other party, you were saying, if I break my promise, this is my future. This is what should happen to me. This is the kind of future you can seek for me if I break my promise. You can understand why it had more binding power than a signature, the way we do covenants today. This was the promise. You were saying, I'm putting it all on the line. I 100% am committed to fulfilling my end of the bargain. And so Abram does it. He sets it all up. He drives the birds away so that everything can be kept as it is. And then he asks God to go first. He's the greater power. He's going to go first. He's going to make the promise. And then Abram's ready to make his promise. He's ready to go. And then this happens in verse 12. As the sun was setting, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a thick, dreadful darkness came over him. When the sun had set and darkness had fallen, a smoking fire pot with a blazing torch appeared and passed between the pieces. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram. So notice, Abram's basically sedated. He's like, can't move. He's like seeing it, but he can't participate. God does his part of the agreement, but when he's supposed to go, he can't make it go. And instead, this mysterious something holding the torch and the fire pot goes through at the moment when he's supposed to go through. Now, here's the question you've got to ask. The question they asked for generations. Who went through and why? What happened? Why didn't Abraham make the promise? Why did the pot make the promise? And the answer is found in the New Testament when we get to Jesus. The answer is found in the Good Shepherd, who is willing to lay down his life, who is willing to endure danger, who is willing to say, I will be hurt, I will be crushed, I will endure anything in order to pursue my sheep. Because the one who went through all those years ago holding that torch was Jesus himself. He said, I'll endure the punishment for their sins. They are not going to live up to the contract. They are not going to be able to hold up their end of the deal. And if we hold them to the promise that they're trying to make, they'll be crushed by their promise. But if they don't receive the blessings from God that we're trying to give them, they'll never have life. So what are we to do? We can't give them life. They won't hold up their end of the deal. And Jesus says, I'll go for them. I'll bear the punishment so that they can receive the promise. Tim Keller wrote it this way. He says, with his perfect life, Jesus Christ completely fulfilled the terms of the covenant, and he earned the blessing. But with his sacrificial death, he completely fulfilled the curse of the covenant, and he leaves the blessing for you and I. Jesus fulfilled the conditions of the covenant so that we could be received unconditionally. So this is important. Does God love you unconditionally? Yes. And what does it cost him to love you unconditionally? Everything. And it's so important that we do not dilute God by imagining him to be some unresponsive emitter of happy thoughts who's just sending out good things. No. Jesus says, you have a shepherd who knows your name, who sees you, who's focused on you, and who will chase you down in order to bring you life. And when the wolf comes, he says, I'll get teared up. The wolf can have me so long as the sheep can go free. And this is what the last thing we learn in this passage about God. We learn that God sacrifices for those in need. He is willing to sacrifice for those in need. And this is so important. We have to recognize what it costs God to love us. We have to recognize the penalty for sin. We have to recognize that God had to do something profound in order to save us. In Dietrich Bonhoeffer's book, Life Together, he talks about living with what he called cheap grace. Bonhoeffer lived at a time where the Nazis were rising, and he was shocked that Christians were going along with the Nazis. These people who spewed hatred and nonsense and who made things up and had no bearings in the truth whatsoever, Christians are getting taken in by them. And he's thinking to himself, how is this happening? How are they getting swept up into this with everybody else? We, as Christians, should know better. And as he reflected, he decided that the chief problem in his nation was the problem of cheap grace. He said people did not understand the cost of grace, and therefore they failed to be transformed by its power. They thought, I'm basically pretty good. I'm basically fine. And God chooses me because I do better than most people. I'm more moral. I care for people. We're good people. That's just who we are. Of course, God likes our family. We're good people. And by diminishing their sin, they're able to justify an us versus them mentality. We're like, yeah, our kind of people are good, but those other people, in this case, those Jews, they're not the right kind of people. So whatever happens to them, whatever. Bonhoeffer says, they forgot that they were sinners saved by grace. And as soon as they forgot that, anything became possible. They were able to be selfish and cowardly. But he said, if and when we understand the true implications of the gospel, if we understand what it cost God to save us, that is when we begin to experience transformation. That is when, and I quote, we will begin to stand up for justice and sacrifice for our neighbor. That is when we won't mind the cost of following Christ when we compare it to the price he paid to rescue us. When we reduce the cost of God's love, it loses its power. But when we receive it and all of its glory, it transforms us. This is what happens when we're led by the Good Shepherd. We're led to a place where we can acknowledge our sin. We're led to a place where we can say, I do need you to save me. I do need you to step in, or else I'm just going to keep on wandering. I'm going to keep on being lost. God, you've got to do something for me. And once we see that, and once we begin following in that kind of posture, that's when we can change. And I want to give you two practical things as we close up here. Two practical things that can and should change about our lives when we're receiving the grace of God. Number one, we should find ourselves able to love others. In a world driven by consumer relationships, the savvy thing to do is to keep your guard up. Because it's one thing to say, I don't want to love people in a consumer way, but when you know everyone else is doing that, it can give you a lot of hesitation. And the savvy thing to do is to hold people loosely and to reject them before they reject you. Preemptive strikes. But again, I want to show you this passage and remind you that God does the opposite. Instead of the preemptive strike to get out before they get us out, Jesus preemptively sacrifices himself and says, I'm going all the way in love, no matter what. I'm totally committed. And when you receive that kind of love, it disarms you. Let me ask you this. What would happen to you if you did not so fear rejection? What would happen if you didn't feel constantly pressured to posture and prove yourself? What if you could trust someone not to pull the rug out from under you and leave you with nothing? What if you felt and believed you were safe? There's nothing in the universe that can deliver that but covenant love. You've got to see God going all the way. You've got to see his commitment to you before you can ever feel safe to love him and love others. But John wrote in 1 John 3:16, this is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay our lives down for our brothers and sisters. Now don't miss the order. When you receive sacrificial love, it opens you up to sacrificial love for others, because now you are safe. Now you are cared for. Now you know that somebody is there for you no matter what. And that's what gives you the resources and the freedom to reach out to others. This is what we might call the outward workings of grace. When grace gets in your life, this is how it works itself out. But then let us also think about the inworking impact of grace. When grace is working into your life, you can finally be honest with yourself. It's very humbling to identify with the sheep. Jesus doesn't choose them because they're smart animals. He doesn't choose them because they're strong. He chooses them because they always wander. It's just who they are. They need a shepherd if they have any chance of getting to the good life. And this is the same metaphor Jesus chooses for us. And friends, I cannot tell you how often we can get into a religious environment where everyone is trying to convince everyone else that they're not a sheep, that they're smarter, that they're stronger. And this is where hypocrisy is bred in religious environments, where people feel this pressure to pretend to be great, to prove that they're great. That certainly was what's happening in the religion of Jesus' day. Everybody's proving themselves and nobody's being honest and saying, God, we need you to do something in order to save us. But I want you to know that when you receive the grace of God, you are free to finally be honest with yourself and others. You are free to confess and say, I don't have this right. I'm struggling with this. This sin seems to really have power over me. You can say it, knowing that for anybody, our only hope is salvation and redemption through Jesus Christ. Have you gotten to the point? Do you feel safe enough and free enough to confess when you have sin? Because if and when you understand grace the way God explains it to us, that's what will happen to you. I think one of the most powerful ways that I've experienced this is in marriage. And in fact, if you ever do premarital counseling with us, or if I officiate your wedding, you're probably going to hear me talk about the power of covenant and what happens when you're in an environment where you know that person is with you through thick and thin. You always expect to learn more about your spouse when you get married, like to see new sides and new angles of them. Like, man, when we're married, I'm going to see it all. But the surprise that people have over and over and over again is what they see about themselves. Because marriage is the most powerful mirror you will ever receive. All of a sudden, you're in a relationship where you are free to be yourself. And when you're free to be yourself, stuff's going to come out of you that you hadn't really noticed before. Like, oh, I've got some work to do. I know some people, you get into marriage, and it's then that you realize how petty you can be, how short your fuse can be. You didn't notice it before, but now it's just out there. You didn't notice how much bitterness you are harboring towards others. You see it coming out even in your relationship with the one you love. What is all this? You don't realize how much fear you have, how closed off you've been, until you get in a relationship where somebody's inviting you to come out of your shell and saying, I'm with you no matter what. You don't realize sometimes how selfish you've become and how everything you do seems to revolve around, is this working for me? But all of a sudden you get in that marriage relationship and it's like, I see the effects of my selfishness. This is the power of unconditional love. It gives us the space to be honest. And unconditional love just happens to be a kind of space where whether you want to be honest or not, it's going to happen. And I just want you to know that there are so many people who keep God at arm's length with really trite confessions, half-hearted seeking after him, just trying to manage him and keep him at bay so that you don't have to deal with all the stuff that's really in your life and really in your heart. Friends, the Good Shepherd can be trusted. When he speaks, as Jesus keeps saying in this passage, when he speaks into your life, it is a loving, trustworthy, calm voice. He's not freaking out. He's with you. He's like that guy who just kept on saying to Bob, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you. Let's go back home. I'm with you. I just want you to know today, I want you to see your Good Shepherd and know his love, because he is not abandoning you. And there's no safer place in the universe than in his love. We began this message by talking about leadership, and we acknowledge that not all leaders are trustworthy. We're going to end by talking about that covenant intimacy, because our Good Shepherd is a leader we can trust. But more than that, he's the lover we all need. And I hope that you've seen that today, and I hope you see how by following him you can experience the best of life. Now, we're going to seal our time of worship with communion. And communion is the perfect opportunity to reflect on what God has given and sacrificed in order to have a relationship with us. And I think it'd be appropriate, as we held on to the elements today, to just think about how far he's gone in order to express that love for you. His body was broken, his blood was spilled, and he's not mad about it, because you are the apple of his eye. So I want to invite everybody in this room to stand together. And what's about to happen is we're all going to be invited to take communion. The only kind of stipulation I would add is this is an act of worship. So it can be your first act of worship, but it is an act of worship. So we ask that if you take these elements, you're saying, I'm ready to commit to the one who has committed to me. As you take them, I invite you to take them back to your seat and have a moment of prayer and reflection and worship, and then we'll all take them together.
Oh, the perfect Son of God, in all his innocence, you're walking in the dirt with you and me. He knows what living is. He's acquainted with our grief. Man of sorrow, son of suffering. The blood and tears, how can it be? There's a God who weeps. There's a God who bleeds. Oh, praise the one who would reach for me. Hallelujah to the Son of suffering. Some imagine you are distant and removed, but you chased us down in merciful pursuit. To the sinner you were grace, and the broken you embrace. And in the end there's proof within your wounds. Yes, in the end there's proof within your wounds. Oh, blood and tears, how can it be? There's a God who weeps. There's a God who bleeds. Oh, praise the one who would reach for me. Hallelujah to the Son of suffering.
come before you to receive your body and your blood. While they were eating, Jesus took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take and eat, this is my body." Let us take the bread. Then he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you. This is the blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." Let us take the cup. Spirit, I just invite you to do the kind of work that only you can do. We can know the truth, but to believe it, we not only need a miracle just to come back, but we need this ongoing miracle of really believing and really trusting in your love. And Holy Spirit, that's what we ask you to do in us. Indwell in us to the point where that grace, that powerful grace and love comes through us. And God, we thank you for the impact that'll have on our lives, on our families, on our community, on our city. In the name of Jesus, we pray. We say amen. Friends, thank you so much for being here today. For those of you who are staying for the work day, we'll get all huddled up around 12 o'clock. For the rest of you, we can't wait to see you again next week. God bless you.